Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramitan Jaina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namah. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Drapaino Vedahakatara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Benedus Tam Savabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Padara Lakshay Kiptashtakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitram Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanara Vindam Tave Vasme Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we're going to continue hearing the beautiful Sri Madhurya Kadambini. And we begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pad Asto Tatsat Sri Simad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Raj Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Pad Asto Tatsat Sri Simad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Raj unto our exalted Rupanuga Varga, all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So yesterday we heard about the sequence of anartha nivriti, the removal of anarthas. This process begins, right, with bhajana kriya, one having taken shelter at the lotus feet of a great Vaishnava, and then begins a process of service, right? Then the anartha nivriti begins. There's 5 stages: Ek Desha Vartini, Bahu Desha Vartini, Prayiki, Purna, and Atyantiki. So the first one, Ek Desha Vartini, partial clearance of anarthas, right? And he described that's like 25%, 12 to 25%. Remember the relationship between how many annas and a rupee, right? So partial clearance, right? And that's the beginning, right? When one begins bhajan. Then Bahudesha Vartini, extensive eradication, like 75%, right? Bahu, many anarthas. And then third, Prayiki, almost complete, like 98%, right? And then Purna, complete, nothing remaining. Full deduction, 16 annas from a rupee, 100 paisa, right? 100%. And then Atyantiki, absolute annihilation. No possibility, then you are in Krishna's Leela. You've been promoted there, you have your eternal spiritual form, and you are situated in that Leela. How is it possible then to fall, right? And so then the next verse explained, and then there's a chart also, bhajana kriya, right? That's the first, partial, right? And then nishta, extensive, right? And then when one comes to rati, eradication almost complete, and when prema arises, the destruction is complete. And then when one achieves Vastu Siddhi, then it's absolute. And remember, within this, it's not like chunks, it's subtle gradations at every stage. Um, anyway, we should take heart from this, that we're getting something, although we're going to hear in the end of this chapter that sometimes we feel, oh, we're not making any progress at all. Uh, but the fact that we feel that, and the fact that we're learning what is progress, what is not, what is anartha, what is not, what's favorable, what's unfavorable, that's quite amazing. That's an amazing insight into the science of bhakti, right? So we're going to hear something special from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on the path of bhaja and how Krishna may keep it hidden from us a little bit to increase our greed and our humility, and so that we don't get ahead of ourselves. Because remember, we already heard that it's possible to commit offense and, aparad, even in advanced stages of bhakti. So if we get too much of the fruits of bhakti before we're not sufficiently purified, then we have the possibility of falling under the sway of what? Pratishta and matsarya. So I have to be, desire for recognition, fame, and envy of others who may have more than us. Right, we all know what that's like. So, now we go to the next verse, 4d, and it's about the offense of Citraketu Maharaj, which in truth is not an offense. Very amazing story, and very important in understanding, the Leela of great devotees in this world. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, we hear that once Maharaj Citraketu committed an offense to a pure devotee, even after receiving the audience of Bhagavan. His committing an offense was only apparent, however. It was not real. Since the same treasure of loving devotion to Bhagavan remained in his heart, both as an associate of the Lord and as Vrtrasura, there is no difference between these two distinct features of his. This is the conclusion, Siddhanta. So that's interesting because, again, what I really appreciated the first time I read this, Madhurya Kadambini, some years back, and what's becoming more apparent is the importance of recognizing what's bhakti and what's not. And wherever there's bhakti, that's good. Right? And wherever there's not bhakti, even if it appears greatly auspicious from the material perspective, that's to be neglected, right? Or even rejected, right? If it's unfavorable. In our beginning stages, we have difficulty perceiving what's favorable and unfavorable, which is why we require constant guidance from Sri Guru to help us in our collective and individual path. Right? And I can recall so many times, both under the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, directly and through his instruction to other disciples, and under the guidance of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, same thing. Things that were not apparent to me, and even having received the instruction, taking some time to understand it, right? And so that's always the path, right? It's not until you come into the higher stages of bhav that you can perceive Guru internally in the heart, right? And take that instruction there. Otherwise, we require protection and guidance from Shiksha Guru. Shiksha Guru, who is aligned with the intent and the mood of our Diksha Guru, right? Who supports our relationship with Diksha Guru, right? And who has affection for us, like a family member, like an uncle. If Diksha Guru is like the father, then the Shiksha Guru is like an uncle, a well-wishing, affectionate uncle, right? So, now what does Srila Narayana Maharaj say about this pastime of Citraketu. He says, after attaining Bhagavan, the cessation of anarthas arising from aparad is absolute, atyantiki. This means that it is impossible to commit an offense to an exalted devotee, mahad aparad. Right. Here a question may arise. If this is so, then how did Citraketu Maharaj, even after attaining Bhagavan, develop the propensity to offend Sriman Mahadev? That's Lord Shiva, right? In response, the revered author says that although we hear that Citraketu Maharaj committed aparad to a great soul, this is not the reality. The offense was only apparent. It is said that the result of committing an offense to a pure devotee is that one's bhakti diminishes or vanishes. Parvati cursed Citraketu Maharaj and he became a demon. But still his bhakti remained unaffected. Palena pala karanam anumiyate. We can infer the cause by the result alone. Therefore, Citraketu Maharaj did not actually commit mahad aparad. Right? So he's going to tell the history from the sixth canto. But that's the important thing. He may have been cursed to take a different kind of body, but his internal purified sentiments of the soul were not disturbed. Right? Because he had already come to that last stage, right? That stage of absolute destruction, atyantiki, of all tendency for aparad, which is helpful in understanding when we sometimes see the pastimes in Braj, and we see the dealings between the associates there. Sometimes they're insulting one another, cursing one another, but when you understand it's on the absolute platform, it doesn't have any of the inebriety of activities in this world. Rather, it becomes delightful, like Radhika cursing the rooster in the early morning. The rooster is crowing. He's doing service under the direction of Purnamasi and Brindadevi. Or, crow now, wake up the divine couple. Sunrise almost here. They have to get back to their home. So the rooster, and anyone who's ever lived in a place where there's roosters, you know that sometimes they can be very disturbing. And Radhika, in the loving embrace of her prananath, of beautiful Sri Krishna, they're together in their chamber in the kunja, she becomes very angry with this rooster and curses him. Oh, that rooster should die. Go to hell. But actually the rooster's under the guidance of her own Sakis, right? Okay, it's time to get up. So we see these contrasting moods, right? She doesn't want to leave, but Leela Shakti controls the movements of Prem, right? Prem has so many varieties and forms of expression, and the Leela will determine that. Now, she's experiencing the impending separation because of that dang rooster, right? So she doesn't want that. But what does that do? That causes the tasting of different kind of Prem, right? So it's quite wonderful, quite lovely, right? So you can't commit offense on that platform, right? Jatila, keep Radhika in the house. She can't go, right? What does that do? It just increases Sri Krishna and Sri Radhika's desire to be together, which nourishes the extraordinary result of their meeting as a result of a pastime that takes place to cause them to rejoin. Right? So many clever things that Krishna and Radhika arrange to overcome the separation imposed by Leela, right? And created by Jatila's own Prem, right? She also has great Prem. She's not an evil person. She's perfected soul. She's the mother-in-law of Srimati Radharani in an extraordinary role. Very delightful, actually. So, the history of Sri Citraketu Maharaj is narrated in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapters 14 through 16. He was the sovereign ruler of the land of Shrudasena. Despite possessing unmatched royal opulence, he remained downcast because he had no son. King Citraketu had accepted the hands of 10 million beautiful women in the hope of having a son, but he remained without progeny. One day, by the desire of Bhagavan, the great sage Angira Rishi came to his royal palace. The king revealed his anguish and implored him repeatedly for a son. Maharaja Angira prepared a charu, a special sweet rice that they use in oblations in yajna, right? And offered it into a sacred sacrificial fire. He fed the remnants to the principal queen, Kritadyuti, saying, "May this produce a son who will give the king both happiness and distress." He then left, right? He predicted to the king that this child will become a source of great happiness and a source of distress. When the king heard that, he thought, yes, great happiness, and he fixated on that, of course, because he'll be my son, glorious son of my first, my primary queen. What distress? Oh, sometimes the son disobeys the father. There's growing pains. They become teenagers. No harm. I can easily overlook that compared to the joy that he will produce. He will be my heir. He will continue our dynasty, right? But he didn't realize what the sage had actually foreseen, what kind of distress, right? So, after eating the sweet rice, the queen became pregnant and in due course gave birth to a most beautiful baby boy. The child began to grow just like a waxing crescent moon. Naturally, King Citraketu's attachment to Queen Kritadyuti increased. Seeing this, the other queens became stricken with envy and hatred, and they killed the child by feeding him poison. He had so many, he just married over and over, seeking some queen that could give him a child. None could, because that was his fate. That was his destiny. And so the queens, as hard as it is to believe, it's an expression of the nature of envy. And because now he's showing, before he was showing favor equally to everyone, who can give me a son? Now she'd given him a son, and they no longer had importance. He's always with her because she's the mother of his most beloved son. So for some reason, some horrible motive, they gave the child poison and he died. And of course, this has caused great grief for the king and everyone in the palace. The great sage had previously stated that the king would have a child that would cause him happiness and distress. Upon hearing of his son's death, Maharaj Citraketu became overwhelmed with sorrow. At that time, the supremely merciful Sri Narada arrived along with Sri Angira Rishi. They're friends, right? Great friends. Sri Narada gave the king much instruction and offered him solace. Nonetheless, it was extremely difficult for the king to understand his teachings. Right, and we all experience that, sometimes confronted with some attachment, some difficult situation. Oh, why has the Lord put me into this position? Why has he done this? You say this is all the will of the Lord and we should happily go along with whatever comes, right? Sometimes that's just too much to bear, right? So the king, he couldn't yet. So Sri Narada gave him, then he couldn't understand. So finally, Narada and Angira summoned the soul of the departed child and had the child pacify the king by imparting instructions about the unsubstantial nature of this material world and the fleeting nature of relationships between father and son, mother and father, and so forth. Right? So, this also happened in the house of Srivas Thakur, right? When all the women were lamenting over the death of Srivas's son, Mahaprabhu came there and again instructed that son, arise. And the son arose and gave that same kind of instruction. Funny, I was just watching a video of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj in New Zealand in 2008, January 1st through the 5th. And it was a darshan audience, a public meeting where all kinds of people were coming to be introduced to him. And if they had a question or some doubt, something they wanted to present. And there was one lady, older lady, probably about my age. So she would have been at that time in her 50s, probably. And her husband had died. Oh, I don't know, within the last year or two. And she couldn't give up her grief. It was still, he was a good devotee, a good husband, and now she felt her life empty and unfulfilled, like a big gap. And that's natural, that void. When that becomes the central point of your life, your relationship with husband, wife, children, whatever, then, how to fill that void. And she expressed that directly to Srila Gurudev. And he told her, he said, well, first of all, you should know your husband's not dead. He's moved on to even a better position, right? So give up that part of your grief right now and be happy for him. But then he said something very interesting, which is along the lines of this. He said, now he's in a new life, he's completely forgotten about you. He doesn't remember you at all. So you should forget him completely. And of course, this is the next step, and it's very hard for her to, what? Very hard. It's almost like being unfaithful. And he said, yes, because you should think of only Krishna as your beloved. Anything that you expect, any happiness you want to have fulfilled through this other worldly relationship, you now see that you can't. He's not here anymore. But Krishna is your eternal friend, your eternal lover. And you go to that place, and then there's no distress, no anxiety of any kind, right? Your needs, desire for food, for warmth, for comfort, for shelter, it goes through the whole list. None of that exists there. Only love and complete fulfillment. So give up that attachment, because you've had so many husbands, and he's had so many different wives. This is just one. And, that's a very strong instruction, but very necessary. And that's what's being revealed in this Citraketu pastime. Right? And Gurudev also, one of my god sisters who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, very nice devotee, she and her husband came to Srila Gurudev in the early 2000s, or late 90s, right? When he first started coming there. And he was a very nice person. And he had some sickness. And Gurudev told him, don't worry, you're going to take birth in a very high-class Brahmana family in India, and that will be your last birth in this world. Whether he's going to be promoted to some devotional higher planet or what that meant, whether he's going to go to the spiritual realm, but he gave him great encouragement. And very nice, amazing. But he did leave the body, and this lady, she's very nice, but they had a very good marriage, and she had that same problem. And Gurudev told her, oh, well, he's forgotten you. And he said that in a light and charming way, and it kind of enlightened her, opened her eyes, and it lifted her heart. And now you have the freedom to give up your attachment to him. Right? Feel free. This is not a punishment, it's a benediction. Right? So, The king then, Citraketu, becoming detached from this world, the king engaged in bhajan under the direction of Sri Narada and achieved the direct audience of Lord Sankarshan, who, being pleased with him, instructed him on the fundamental truths of Dharma and Gyan. The king ascended a divine airplane and became the ruler of the Vidyadharas, wandering freely in the valleys of Mount Sumeru. These are a race of celestial beings who are attendants of Lord Shiva, and they have a lot of mystic powers and knowledge. So he's their ruler, but he's also a pure devotee. And he's also a godbrother of Lord Shiva, because his Ishtadev is Lord Sankarshan, as is Lord Shiva's. So, now he's their king, and he's wandering also in a great airplane like a city, going throughout the universe freely, as well as in the valleys of Mount Sumeru, that giant mountain in the middle of Jambudvip, which is not visible to ordinary eyes, subtle, but there. One day, Maharaja Citraketu saw Bhagavan Sri Shankar in an assembly of great Munis, Siddhas, and Charanas, with his arm around Parvati, who was seated on his lap. All right? Very intimately, apparently, right? As Maharaja Citraketu came closer, he laughed loudly in the presence of Parvati Devi, because this is his godbrother, his dear friend, right? So he's making a joke. Just see the situation of the great instructor of Dharma, the guru of the whole world, Sri Mahadev. He's saying, in such a learned assembly, he has placed his wife on his lap? How shameless. Now, he knew the position of Mahadev. He knew the position of Parvati. She's Mahamaya herself. But he's so friendly, and he can joke. It's like, because he knew, oh, this appears to be a transgression of Dharma, but they're completely transcendental. And they're an eternal consort for the purpose of the creation and overseeing all the affairs of this material world. Her energy does that. And the destruction. So he's just joking. What are you doing sitting like that? But Bhagavan Sri Shankar knew that Citraketu was a dear devotee of Bhagavan, so he simply smiled and said nothing. And he could not be afflicted or affected by an insult that came from the mundane plane, because he's completely transcendental. I mean, even in this world we have the saying, sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt me, right? What can that do to Lord Shiva? Completely transcendental. So he's just smiling, thinks it's funny. But Parvati, however, Parvati Devi could not tolerate Citraketu's behavior, his ridicule and disrespect. Remember, as Sati, in her previous birth, when her own father had disrespected Lord Shiva, her husband, she cursed him and gave up her body. She's so devoted to her eternal consort and husband, right? So, she cursed Citraketu. You will take birth in a most sinful demoniac race. In this way, you will never be able to disrespect great souls, because you won't get to associate with them. You'll be a demon, right? So King Citraketu was not even slightly distressed by this. So he took this as some function of the will of the Lord, right? Somehow I'm supposed to take birth in this way. There must be some reason for this, perhaps some pastime. So to please Parvati, he glorified her, accepted the curse, offered obeisance, and went on his way. He did not retaliate. His power was such that, had he so desired, he could have also cursed Parvati, but he did not. And Lord Shiva instructed Parvati in that way and said, just see the quality of this great devotee. He's beyond that kind of curse, but he doesn't care, because his bhakti could not be disturbed. Remember, he might take a material, different kind of body, but his bhakti remains intact. Well, no, and so we see that in the prayers. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, many prayers. I'll take any kind of birth as long as I can be in the association of devotees, always remember you, always, be engaged in your service. The material condition is irrelevant. The bhakti is what is important, right? And so also in this chapter, we're getting instruction about being able to differentiate between that which is important, the degree of bhakti in someone's heart, what position or place they've achieved, how they're moving forward, are they sincere in bhakti, and then the faults and, things that, little obstacles and missteps that come up. We want to develop the same kind of vision that Bhagavan has, this compassion and mercy towards his sincere devotees, even the conditioned ones like ourselves who are trying so desperately. Not those persons who are casual in committing offense, and misusing the holy name just to excuse their offense and use the holy name to promote their material enjoyment, but people who are sincerely trying to get beyond all that, but sometimes misstep, right? On the highest level, nothing can afflict their bhakti, but on lesser levels, bhakti may be affected. But Krishna says, if we have great remorse and regret about our weakness, and we're praying that even in the midst of engaging in a misstep, if we're praying and feeling very bad about it, Krishna will look on us very fondly and help us. So, Srila Prabhupada, I guess there could be no really greater example of how this takes place, because he came to the Western world where there was no foundation of Vedic culture, no conception of proper and improper behavior, what to speak of the culture that supports bhakti, right? And so all those years that he was teaching, he was dealing with disciples who, all of us just doing so many stupid things in our desire to do bhakti, in our desire to please him, but taking so many missteps, and yet with kindness, and yet firmness, with compassion, sometimes chastising, sometimes praising, whatever it took to bring us along step by step. Just, pure love, right? And showing us what's important, right? And Bhaktivinoda Citraketu Maharaj also explained this as well, how to look upon devotees that sometimes fall down from a position, right? Maybe they were in a position that was above their eligibility, but they took it for the purpose of preaching and serving their guru, but due to whatever reason, they couldn't sustain it, and they fell down. He described it as, like soldiers on a battlefield. Sometimes on the battlefield, a soldier who's only an enlisted person gets promoted, right, to the position of officer, because all the other officers have been killed. They get a battlefield promotion. And then they go to the front, they lead the battle, and then they die. They get killed. And he says, this is a glorious death, right? Dying in the service of Guru. So, apparently, like Citraketu, but to a much lesser degree, obviously, having to give up one's status, having fallen from it, but under the guidance and mercy of Guru, their bhakti can continue. So Srila Prabhupada did that. If he had a sannyasi who fell down, some young man, in his 20s, doing his best, but then he fell down. He just told them, that's all right. You're still my disciple. I still love you. Maintain your connection. Get married. Be a good grihastha and continue to preach in the same way. You're a very good preacher, very good devotee. Just keep preaching, right? Or others in different situations, just get back on the horse, right? It's said that if you want to learn how to ride a horse, right, or even teach another, another horse who's not accustomed to riders, if you get thrown off, the horse is testing you, you have to immediately get up and get back on the horse. If you give up at that point and try to come back sometime later, that horse will know, and it'll be very difficult. But if you immediately get back on the horse, then you can, overcome your own fears and overcome the, sense of superiority of the horse, right? So we're always like that, getting thrown off our horse, right? But you got to get back on the horse and just keep going. That kind of sincerity is so much appreciated, but with remorse, right? Not being very casual about it, right? Oh, no problem. But really wanting just bhakti. So, having been damned by the goddess, Citraketu took birth as the son of Tvasta Rishi and became known as Vrtrasura. His body was enormous and terrifying, and all the demigods feared him. During a great battle with the demigods, Indra, carrying a thunderbolt made from the bones of Dadichi Rishi, came to kill him. Ready to fight, Indra appeared before Vrtrasura, riding the elephant Airavata. Sri Bhagavan had instructed Indra to kill Vrtrasura with the thunderbolt weapon, but it fell from his hand. Vrtrasura picked up the weapon, but being greatly devoted to Dharma, he personally returned it to Indra, saying, "Kill me with this, I am not afraid, not even of time." There's a lot of backstory here about, how he was just trampling demigods everywhere. And in that fight, there's a picture in Srila Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam where you see the size of Vrtrasura compared to the demigods. How horrifying for them. And this club of Indra that he'd thrown at Vrtrasura, it's just like a little toothpick to him. And, he gives it back. And he knows, he's a great devotee, he knows that he's destined to be killed by Indra. Right? So he doesn't care about that at all. And so he says, "Kill me. I'm not afraid, not even of time. Bhagavan Sri Shama Sundar is before me, and I consider it my great fortune to be able to relinquish the demoniac material body as I gaze upon him." So now he's going to quote. He's saying, Srila Gurudev says, having direct realization of Bhagavan, he prayed in Srimad Bhagavatam, verses in the 11th chapter, verses 24, 25, 26, and 27. 4 amazing verses, which are cited by our acharyas in their commentaries in many places. Aham hare tava padaika mula dashanu daso bhavitasmi bhuya mana smarita supater gunangste granitava karma karotakaya. O Lord, please bestow such mercy upon me that in my next birth I may obtain the opportunity to exclusively serve the servants who have taken shelter of your lotus feet. O beloved of my life, Pran Ballabha, may my mind always remember your all auspicious qualities. May my speech always describe the glories of those qualities. And may my body always remain engaged in your service. Beautiful prayer, not concerned with the situation with the body at all. Just wherever you place me, let me serve your servants. Let me be, the Vaishnava Sevak. Das, Anudas, right? Let me always remember you, let me always glorify you, and let me always engage in your service. Very high prayers. At the end of all these prayers, actually, Indra is going to see, oh my goodness, I'm the leader of the Devas, the so-called devotees, right? Well, they're devotees, but I'm supposed to be considered a devotee, but listening to his prayers, this is the real devotee, and I'm tasked with killing him. Oh my goodness. Na naka prashtam na chapada meshtyam na sarvabhaumam na rasadipatyam na yoga siddhir apunarbhavam va samanjasatva virahaya kankshe. O source of all good fortune, I do not desire the heavenly planets, the realm of Brahma, or rulership over the earth, or lower planetary systems, nor do I desire any mystic perfection. I do not even want liberation, if it means I would have to give you up. What's this like? Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam bhajagadisha kamaye. I don't want any of that, right? Mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatad bhakti rahaitukitve. I don't want bhakti. They're very beautiful prayers. Ajata paksha eva mataram kaga stanyam jata vatsarara shudartaha priyam priyeva visitam vishanna mano ravindaksha didikshate tvam. O lotus-eyed Lord, my heart is restless to have darshan of you. Just as featherless chicks eagerly look out for their mother, as hungry calves are anxious to drink milk of their mothers, or as a lover separated from her beloved because he is in a foreign land longs to meet him. 3 kinds of separation he's discussing here. There's some difference, right? There's some superiority in some of them over the others. But the chicks, right? The calves, why are they always thinking, oh, when will mother come and feed me? So for the devotee, oh, when will I be able to serve my Lord? That's our food, service. Our food is the holy name, tasting that, drinking that nectar, right? Or a beloved in separation. This hints at the mood of the gopis, yeah? So, Mamotama shloka janeshu sakyam samsara chakre brahmata sakarmabhi tvan maya matma jadara gesheshva asakta chittasjananata bhuyat. Lord, I do not want liberation. I am not concerned if I have to repeatedly wander throughout this vicious cycle of birth and death as a result of my actions. But wherever I go, and in whatever species I may take birth, please grant me the loving friendship of your dear devotees. Master, I only wish that I may never have any relationship with those who are bewildered by your illusory potency and attached to house, body, wife, and sons. That's a beautiful thing. So to be born in the family or community of devotees, that's a great, great blessing. This is what pure devotees pray for. Wherever you send me, just please send me to be with devotees. A devotee mother, a devotee father, devotee friends when I'm growing up, right? Devotional community. Don't let me be born with a bunch of karmis, please, please. Thus, despite being in the body of a demon, Citraketu, in this case Vrtrasura, not only remained immersed in remembrance of Bhagavan, but also achieved direct darshan of him. Srila Jiva Goswami has quoted these 4 verses in his Priti Sandarbha, and in conclusion writes, the meaning here is that Vrtrasura's words reveal his immaculate prema for Bhagavan. That is why the account of the killing of Vrtrasura is regarded as special within Srimad Bhagavatam. Other Puranas also accept these prayers as uppermost among the features of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Matsya Purana also states that the killing of Vrtrasura has been described in the work entitled Bhagavat Purana. Right? So this is worthwhile. You can go into the commentaries, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and see what they say about this. Very extraordinary. We have to stop here, but we will... tomorrow. Okay, so we'll offer obeisance to Srila Prabhupada, Shri Gurudev, all of our acharyas, all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol.